YouTube, whatever. So welcome everyone. I know that meetups with Zoom is not the most fun thing, but I see a couple of guys enjoying some beverages, so that's good. um, and I hope July, August we can start back the in-person meetings. I was just talking with Trip earlier about maybe going to the Charleston Tech Center and using that meetup space. If you guys haven't seen the new tech center, it's pretty awesome. So hopefully we can get back to more in person. And one of the things is to try to figure out how to do it hybrid, right? So that it's both online and in person. And whether you're online or in person, you still get the same quality. That's why the tech center, they're going to have a hot room that's got all the AV stuff set up, and we should be able to do that pretty effectively. We'll see. This stuff's been tricky in the past, but so this week we're going to talk about Deno, but before I do that, I want to just mention to everyone to, if you have time next Thursday at 5, we have a special guest, Gleb from Cypress. And if you're interested in end-to-end visual testing, he is the distinguished engineer at Cypress, who that's their product, is this end-to-end visual testing tool suite. And he'll be showcasing that for us. So I think that'll be a very awesome event, something that you don't want to miss if you can't, if you can make it. And then I think in June, Travis Neslin's going to give a presentation on Next.js and using Next.js with, I think, a content management system that they use. But that should be really cool too. I think that's either June 6th or June 10th. I can't remember the right date. But so we got a lot of cool stuff coming up. Today, I'm going to talk about Deno, and specifically Deno Deploy. And I'll go with a quick background on Deno, but I'm going to try to spend most of the time talking about Deno Deploy. Let me share my screen. So Deno is a server runtime that runs JavaScript or TypeScript, and it's kind of a competitor to Node. The same creator that created Node created Deno, and he just swapped a few characters around and created a dinosaur logo, which is pretty cool. And there's two kind of products to Deno. One is the CLI, which manages all of the bundling of your JavaScript or TypeScript. It comes built in with a linter and a test library, and a bunch of other kind of tools. And it runs TypeScript natively, so you don't have to include anything in your repository to use TypeScript if you want to use TypeScript. The reason that Ryan Dahl, the creator of Node, decided to create Deno is a few years ago, he published or did a talk about 10 things he regrets about Node.js. And some of them were just really when Node was built, right? So promises were not really formed back then as a tight specification. Wasn't built into the language. Async await was not built into the language. So he kind of wanted to have those in security. And we'll get to security in a minute, but the interesting point is that with Node, when you run it as someone running it in production on a server, that executable has all these privileges on that server. It can do all these things. So he wanted to create a system that was very explicit about what it can access and when, and that can allow things to run in these kind of environments that may not be as safe as like maybe a Docker container or a single Linux process or VM. Totally changed the build system. I think they're using Rust now, and really wanted to ratify Node modules. If anyone's worked with Node for a while, Node modules can kind of get out of hand. And sometimes you can get into some problems where you just have to, kind of remove your Node modules path and rebuild everything over again, re-pull it down and install it. But he wanted the runtime to really work much like the browser. So that's why he created Deno. Some people say that it's not enough to change from Node. Node's really established. Deno is starting from zero, but I think there's a lot of promise in it, even though, a lot of people disagree with that. But I think there is a lot of potential future with Deno, and this deploy thing that I want to talk about may help understand why. So with that, any questions so far about Deno? Anything that I didn't cover about what Deno is that someone may be interested to know?
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
Cool. So deploy. Deno Deploy, if you're familiar with Cloudflare workers, it's a very similar model to that. And basically it helps you deploy applications on the edge. What is the edge? The edge is, you can think of over 200 plus data centers all around the world. And instead of deploying to, like Amazon, Virginia, you do your deploy and it distributes to all those 200 so that your app is like within 50 miles of any given browser at any given time. So it's a globally distributed JavaScript VM. And with that, it's actually a special runtime that really follows the API of what a service worker would follow, where you actually add an event listener to a fetch call, and then you respond to that. So this product, I think, will be for pay, but it's in beta now, and you can get started and work on it. So I'm going to go through kind of how that works, and yeah, we'll check it out. So let's see. I've got a little GitHub repository that's called Deno Starter. And I'm just going to fire that up into Gitpod. And Gitpod is just like a virtual workspace with VS Code in front of it and things like that. But Deno is pretty simple to install. You basically can run a shell command in your Mac or Linux terminal, or you can go to Denoland and follow instructions to install Windows or to install with Brew or whatever. And what what you get is just one single executable, which was one of Ryan's kind of constraints, is he just wanted one executable to do things. With Deno Deploy, it builds on the web, and this direct GitHub integration. So you do need a GitHub account to deploy apps with it. It's all ES modules, so it doesn't support any common JS, and the API is compatible with Cloudflare workers. So to run it locally, we need to install another CLI called Deploy CTL. Deploy CTL allows us to run essentially the same VM that Deno Deploy runs. So that's the first thing that I'm going to do is kind of install that. And we can just install it by just running this Deno command, Deno space install. And we're going to give it the privilege to read, write, check the environment, the network, run, no check. So all these privileges will allow us to run it. Let's see, my environment's still firing up. I thought it was done. Let's give it one more minute. But what you'll notice is that we're gonna install the CLI from a URL. So everything is driven by URLs. There is no package manager. There's no npm. Everything that you work with Deno is a URL. Here we go. Okay, so I should have my VM set up with Deno installed. So I should be able to type Deno version, and I've got version 1.10.2, which is cool. And I'm gonna paste in this install, and that's gonna install this deploy CTL, which basically will allow me to run this Deno Deploy service locally. And I'm just going to create a new file called hello.js. And you could do TS if you wanted to do TypeScript, which it's just works out of the box. And basically, I'm going to create a Deno Deploy app. And we'll start with add event listener. And we're going to listen to the fetch event. And it's going to return an event. And then what we want to do is return a response. So everything's built off the fetch API. And in the fetch API, you have two built-in types. You have a request type and a response type. And so we're going to return a new response. And the response will be hello world. And then we're going to give it an object. And in that object, we're going to give it some headers. And one of the headers is content type. And we're going to do, I think, text point. And that's our hello world example of a Deno Deploy app. To run that locally, we just run deploy CTL run, and we give it the URL. And it's running on port 8080. So if we open up our browser, and I didn't break anything. Let's see. Yeah, I broke something. Let's see what I did wrong. Okay. Get an event, we create a new response. So the last piece is event.respond with response. So I can't just return it. I have to actually do a respond with call. So we say response and then event.respond with response. And this command has a watch on it too. So you could do a watch and it would respin, which is kind of nice. We'll just restart it here. And let's see. Yep, there we go. We got hello world. Okay. So what's cool about that is that you're using kind of the same kind of API as you would use with service workers. And it makes it much easier to deploy on the edge. Now you do have some restrictions. You don't have access to all of your node modules. So if you build an app on the edge, more than likely you're going to interact with your, kind of data services layer via an API call, via REST or GraphQL or some sort of API call. They may have access to a key value store on the edge that's distributed as well, which could help too. But for the most part, you're going to want to have this kind of business layer close to your app, and then you're going to have your API for your data or services layer inside, kind of a cloud like an Amazon or Azure or Google. The other thing is to serve assets, right? You would have to read them in and then stream them out. So you would read them in from your file system, and then you would stream them out as a response, which is a little different. But the one thing I wanted to show is this framework that is built for this, called Sift. And let's see, go up here. Yeah. So, this hello world is fine, and adding this event listener is okay. But I think I would want to have a little bit more of a better experience than that, and that's what Sift does. So I'm going to try to line my code up here and just put it over here. All right. So to do that, to use Sift, we're going to basically import it as a dependency. And so to look at how to use dependencies with Deno is, like I said, everything's a URL. So it's a little bit different than Node, where you would just do npm whatever. With Deno, there's two ways you can do it. You can use import pass with JSON, and that's still kind of unstable, kind of a little tricky. Another way you can do it is create a deps file. And then that way you're not having to put your URL in your main code. You just have it in this deps file. And that's what I like doing, is doing deps.js. And then basically you just do export, and then the types or the functions you want to export. So with the Sift, we're going to export serve and JSON, and then the URL. So we're going to export it from Deno land, and we're going to do 0.3.0/mod TS. And one of the other things with Deno is you'll see a lot of this mod dot whatever. That is the same thing as index. So it kind of stands for module and it's shorter, but that's kind of the same nomenclature where you would put index.js and Deno, you would put mod.js or .ts. So this export is basically allowing us to, import from that depths file instead of having to import from the URL straight off the bat. So we can just say import serve from depths.js. And now with this Sift framework, we can just say serve, and then we can give it URLs. So we could say the root URL, you know what, we want to call this get index endpoint, and the about URL, I'm going to call this get about endpoint. And then we can, kind of separate those in files if we wanted to. So we can say get index from .api .mod.js, and we could say import get about from API about.js, and we'll have to kind of create a new folder called API, and then in that folder we'll create a mod.js file and a about.js file. And with the mod.js, we can handle that request more or less like you would in Node. Kind of, you just import the JSON from our depths.js file, and we say export default async function, and we can just return a new response. Hello from Deno, right? And we can do about, and what we could do is do some HTML. Headers, content type, text HTML. So we've got our depths pulling this framework, and then in our hello, we've got kind of our, our route handlers. And then in our API, we've got our mod for our default route and like about for our about route. And if we run Deno control again, I get an error. And this error is something that they're working to fix. But basically the TypeScript, it's pulling types from two different places, and they're kind of conflicting. So we just have to tell the deploy to ignore that by saying libs equals ns comma fetch event, and that should work. Cool. So if we open the browser, we get hello from Deno. And if we go to about, we get about stuff as H1. Which that gives us a much nicer kind of experience than doing all the add event listener stuff. So that's pretty cool. And then there's only one more thing that I want to try to show. I've got time. So one of the nice things that is great about Deno is I didn't have to install so much stuff just to get up and running. I just basically had to install this one, kind of deploy CTL library, and TypeScript's in the box and JSX is in the box. So in this about, we're kind of using a template string here, but we can actually use JSX, and we can bring in Preact, which is very similar to React. So we can just bring in Preact here, and I'm just going to use the URLs. We could put those in our dependency file, and then we could just create an app. We do HTML, and we're doing JSX here, right? So we got our head, title, hello, body, and H1, hello from JSX. And then our response, we're just going to get rid of that. And we're just going to call render to string. And we're going to instantiate our app. Okay. Then we're going to pass content type text.html. And I think we should be good. Let's see. Oh, only thing I messed up is, so it supports JSX, but we have to rename our file as JSX to let it know. And now it's going to know that this file has JSX in it. Deno will know that, I think. About line 9. Don't need JSON. Oh. Maybe that was it. Okay, let's see if that worked. So we got hello world. Let's do about hello from JSX. Pretty cool. Now let's deploy, right? So what we want to do is go ahead and commit all these things. And then you go into Deno Deploy and sign up. And basically you just need a GitHub account. And once you signed up, then you create your project, give it some random name, Lucky Raccoon. Is that spelled right? It's raccoon spelled right. 1C. Okay. Was that wrong?
I don't know. It
Okay.
underlined it, so maybe it's
Whatever. So now you just give it your deploy URL so we can get our GitHub URL. Let's see, get remote -v. And I think command click, open that up. Yeah, so we got our stuff in there. And deploy from GitHub, continue. And then we just give it our URL. And so it's Deno starter .blob main, and I think it's hello.js. So we do link. And if we did everything, and here you can like set your custom domain, environment variables, everything. But if we did everything, we might be up. We are deployed. So
Very
that
nice.
was
Very nice.
Even if you've used tools like Vercel or AWS Lambda, it can take a couple of minutes to build. With this, you are, as soon as you commit, literally within seconds, it's up. Now, this is a small project, so time will tell if it's a super huge project, what that is, but still, that's pretty nice, especially for a globally distributed kind of platform. So that's all I had. Hopefully that was helpful. Happy to answer any questions.
That's cool. So would you say, I don't know, just for an example, like
You're muted.
sorry. So you would say like Sift is to Deno as Express is to Node, sort of right now?
Yeah, I think so. It gives you all the kind of the nice stuff that you have to deal with anyway, like sending JSON commands, serving static pages, doing JSX, right? It just gives you all those things out of the box to reduce boilerplate. So I would agree with that.
TJ, you said Swift is to Deno is what is to Node?
As Express?
Tom, do you feel like Deno falls short in any way, like compared to Node? I mean, I know it's still kind of new, so they have some bugs to work out, I'm sure, but do you see any like downfalls in it?
So one place that they are working on that I think, and not a lot of people are super aware of this, but their security model, especially if you do JSON Web Tokens, works for kind of the hashes, but it doesn't work for RSA encryption or the elliptical curve encryption yet. They're still working on that. But if you need to generate tokens with secrets, it works just fine. That's one thing. Now the other thing is if you're kind of tethered to a node service, like for example GraphQL are tethered to, you know, kind of Keystone JS or some of these other kind of ORM-ish tools, then you may kind of struggle with Deno. So if you are kind of married to kind of these backend services that are specific for Node, you may find yourself not able to move over to Deno, which shameless plug, Hyper wouldn't have that problem. So.
Cool.
And for its worth, this is one place to deploy Deno. You can deploy Deno on any kind of legacy infrastructure, whether it's on-prem or AWS EC2s or DigitalOcean or you know, Vercel, whatever. You can deploy Deno. This Deno Deploy is just taking it to the next level and giving you a place to put stuff on the edge on this global network. So also trying to create a frictionless environment, right? You know, to get your code, get it reviewed, and as soon as it hits the main branch, it is out there. And having, you know, good, you know, red, green, green kind of deploys, blue, green deploys, and all of that stuff, just to allow you to really solve that continuous delivery process. And you can leverage feature flags and things like that, but they're definitely taking the mindset, ship as often as possible, and don't try to do these long-lived kind of branches and merge everything together kind of mindset. So. And no more fighting over how to format your code. They've got testing built in, so you know you don't have to pick a test runner. It's just, you know, Deno space test, and it can also compile or bundle into a single executable binary. So it would include not only your code, but it would also include the Deno binary embedded. So then you could distribute essentially one file for folks to actually run your app. And they will be working on tools like Electron, kind of Deno's version of Electron, so you could kind of build desktop apps. And I think they'll be working on some tools with mobile as well, but I don't know for sure in that regard. But I think like Internet of Things, this kind of delivery point, because Deno is secure, and you basically, as you run it, you dictate the privileges it has. Like when you run Deno, you can say, you can talk to the internet, but you can only talk to this IP, or you can only talk to this URL. You can't talk to the whole internet, just this URL. Or you can read the environment, but you can only read these 3 environment variables. And I think that's what really makes it interesting, because then you could sit on like this Internet of Things device that may be not super protected, but you know that app that's running is only able to do the things that it can do, if that makes sense.
The not having to install the node modules is pretty nice. To update a package, you just change the URL and the version of the URL. Is that how that works?
Yep. Yep.
Nice. It's very simple.
Yeah. And I really like this depths pattern, where you just, you know, you put your URLs and your depths and they're all in one place, and you can go through and update them, and it's pretty easy. And also, like, to update a new version of Deno, again, it's pretty easy. It's like Deno upgrade or something like that. And then it upgrades. So it's like super painless to stay current on stuff. But it's also, you are locking yourself into versions. So there's no like, am I locked into a specific version or not? By default, you're locked in. You can't kind of say, just give me the latest, greatest stuff. You have to be explicit. And I like that. Cool. Ruben, any questions?
No, I think it's really cool, but no, I don't have any questions.
Trip, any questions from you?
I'd like to see a quick code change get redeployed. And
Okay.
continuous delivered real quick. That'd be pretty cool.
Cool. I can do that. If I can type without my Vim. So can't do Svelte on Deno yet. Well, there is a library that does it, but I'm waiting for Svelte Kit to support it. So, but you do get, React and all that stuff. Okay. Let's go to make sure I pushed. Let me refresh this. Yeah. There it is. 18 seconds ago. Let's see.
Cool.
It's pretty fast.
Let's see the logs. Two milliseconds. That's unacceptable.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Thanks for showing this.
Yeah, it's still early days, but I think it's really worth playing around with it, experimenting if you have some spare time. The documentation's pretty good. This Sift library is what really got me excited. So I didn't have to add event listeners fine, but that's just a lot of code to type. So, and yeah, I think that's all I've got.
Cool. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Yep. Hope you guys have a great afternoon and catch you next time.
You too. Thanks.
See you.